All right, good evening, everybody. I'd like to call to order the Planning Commission meeting for May 17th, 2022. Kaylee, can we have a roll call, please?
Chair Gove.
Present.
Vice Chair Tarnay.
Here.
Commissioner Miller.
Here.
Commissioner Riley.
Here.
And Commissioner Freeman is noted as absent.
All right, and I'd like to invite anybody that would like to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, we'll move into public comment. So agenda item number 4 is an opportunity for public comment for items not on tonight's agenda. If you have a public comment, please fill out a public comment card and make your way up to the podium and state your piece. Okay, seeing none, we'll close public comment. Moving on to agenda item number 5, approval of minutes. Number 1 is the March 15th minutes. Will be continued to the next meeting due to lack of quorum. Only Commissioner Riley and Commissioner Miller were at that meeting. Okay. Okay, commissioners, do I have any questions or changes on the April 19th, 2022 meeting minutes?
Yeah, no, I wasn't there.
So
I
yeah,
don't have
this is,
anything to say.
you weren't at the April 19th one either?
I was at the March meeting, but we're not going to move on those, right? Because we
Correct.
don't have a quorum.
Okay.
It looks like there's...
Got it.
And Dave, Chair Gove, you were not also at that meeting as well.
That's
so
correct.
We'll have to continue that one as well.
Okay, all right, so we'll move on with that. Great. I like the pace of this meeting so far. Okay, we'll move into agenda item number 7, public hearings, major review. Agenda item 7.1 is for application number 2020-135, the Estates Meadows Residential Project. And Yumi will take it away with a staff presentation. Yumi?
Thank you, Chair Gove. As you noted, this is the Estates Meadows project. It was actually an item that was continued from the October 19th, 2021 meeting that you reviewed. The Estates Meadows project is located on Estates Drive, right next to the rodeo grounds, north of Old Brockway Road. The project today in front of you is a 30-unit affordable senior housing project with community room, bike storage room, and patio. It's as identified, it's for tenants 55 or older, 55 years or older, and it's being proposed to be restricted to 50 to 60% AMI, and all the units are one-bedroom units. The project also has a tentative map to subdivide the parcels into 2. So the existing senior apartments on the north would be separated from the proposal you're seeing today. And as noted, this is a different project than what you saw in October. Things have changed, and we'll talk about that a little bit as well. This is the project being proposed to you today. This is the site plan. There's 2 buildings, Building A, and it's a little bit faint to see, but Building B is in the center of the project site. And then there's a dual encroachment driveway, pretty much a one-way access driveway, except for the western portion, which can be either one way or it can be 2 ways. So the applicants are proposing Building A, which you can see the perspectives here and this floor plan for the first floor. The Building A has 16 one-bedroom units. Approximately each unit is 560 square feet. It's 2 stories and 33 feet tall, and this is the building that has a community room and community patio and a bike storage room. Building B, which is on the eastern portion of the site, it has 14 one-bedroom units, which have both 525 square foot units and 560 square foot units. And then this one's 2 stories, which is around 34 feet tall. Today, the applicants are requesting a development permit and a project amendment for the underlying development permit to establish 11 or more residential units for ground disturbance over 26,000 square feet and amending the underlying Truckee Senior Apartments project. They're also requesting a minor use permit for disturbance within 200 feet of a wetland, a planned development to request modifications for development standards, and in order to be eligible for a planned development, they have to meet 1 project mandatory feature, and they're proposing to do 100% affordable housing. And then they're also proposing a tentative map to subdivide the property into 2 parcels with a 60-foot road easement for Estates Drive. Today, the Planning Commission's role is to ensure consistency with the Development Code Standards and Subdivision Map Act, ensure compatibility of the project to the adjacent wetland, review the requested modifications to the development standards to ensure a superior site design, and the structure of this discussion is the same as what you looked at in your staff report. We'll talk about the planned development requests for modifications to setbacks, parking, landscaping, exterior space, and site coverage, and then we'll talk a little bit about the wetlands and a little bit about the architecture. And I'll also identify the key changes that have been made since October. And just a quick reminder, the main finding for planned development is that the proposed project would produce a comprehensive development of superior quality than the standards would produce. So that could be where the structures are placed, orientation opportunities, looking at high quality architectural design, increased landscaping or open space, and improved design solutions for parking. As noted, the applicants are requesting planned development for modifications to setbacks, both the front and rear setback. They're asking for reductions. The applicants are requesting a 50-foot front yard setback for residential building walls and a 12-foot building setback for building eaves, which is reduced from 20 feet for the building walls and 14 feet for building eaves. So a reduction from the easement line. The front setback is measured from the easement line rather than the property line. From the property line, they meet that standard for 20 feet. The applicants are proposing a 30-foot buffer from curb and gutter, and there's landscaping along Estates Drive. So those are two justifications for why this could be appropriate if the Planning Commission does agree. The applicants are also asking for an 18-foot rear yard setback for only the trash enclosure, which is reduced from a 20-foot standard rear yard setback, which is located east of Building A and southwest of the parking area. And the applicants have worked with our Solid Waste and Recycling Division, who works with TTSD, the servicing agency for trash removal, and they've determined that this is the best location for backing in and taking out the trash. Additionally, the rear setback reduction wouldn't have as much impact to any future development on the project to the south, since it is located next to a wetland and it is open space recreation. It is zoned recreation. The applicants are also requesting a reduction in the parking requirements from 56 parking spaces to 46 spaces for 31 bedroom units. This is an 82% reduction from our standard parking requirements. They're proposing at least one space per one bedroom, and then potentially 16 spaces for additional parking or guest parking, which staff is recommending would be managed through a parking management plan in condition 46. Essentially, the applicants have found that the site is constrained by the wetlands, which has made it difficult to accommodate all the requirements of the development code. There are opportunities, a little bit of open space to the eastern part of the property site, where they could potentially put in a third encroachment and parking, which would also not be consistent with our standards, the third encroachment. It also would create more opportunities for potential disturbance to the wetland with people walking across the wetland. So staff doesn't think that doesn't recommend that additional parking be provided where there's actual open space that's not encumbered by a wetland. The applicants are also requesting a reduction to the interior parking lot landscaping requirement. Right now, our development code requires 200 square feet of landscaping per 5 spaces of parking, and 2 trees and 4 shrubs for every 5 spaces. So what would be required today under this project proposal would be 1,800 square feet of landscaping, 18 trees, and 37 shrubs. They're proposing 770 square feet of landscaping and 3 trees and 9 shrubs. Overall, staff has found that the landscaping is dispersed throughout the project site, with concentrations along Estates Drive and the screening at the rear of the property and along the wetland fence. In general, staff believes it does meet the goals for screening and aesthetics. It is not a large swath of parking. It is a double-loaded parking aisle, essentially, and is not like a Safeway parking lot with, that has many double-loaded aisles of parking. So that is one consideration that the Planning Commission can have today. Additionally, the applicants are requesting a reduction in patio space requirement. Your staff report actually identified that they're requesting a reduction in patio and deck deck space, but upon further review, staff identified that the deck is actually a balcony, and it complies with our balcony standards, and so a request for a reduction in the balcony standard is not necessary. And that requirement is that each unit would have a 90 square foot patio or deck, or 60 square feet a balcony. And we've talked about this in the past. I don't 100% know why they're so different, but they are, and we have definitions, and the actual project complies with the balcony definition for the second floor. There's 38,000 square feet of common open space, which is beyond the required 7,500 square feet, and the applicants are providing a community patio with fire pit with storage closets throughout the buildings. So they're proposing a 72.5 square foot patio, which is a little less than what's required, but there is proposed exterior open space for each unit right now, proposed. The planning staff is proposing condition of approval 49, which would require a low railing or low fence to delineate the private area for the patio, just so it doesn't necessarily spill out where there's where it would contain the private area and provide a little more privacy and delineation for the users. The applicants are also requesting a 1% increase in site coverage, which amounts to 3,900 square feet of additional coverage than what would ordinarily be allowed under our development code. Right now, that's mostly due to, well, it is mostly due to the senior apartments to the north, which, if subdivided, would create would have 54% site coverage, which is beyond the 50% requirement of the RM district. The resultant parcel for the proposed Estates Meadows project is actually at 40%. So if that was a standalone project, it would meet the requirements for site coverage. However, because of the single-story nature of the senior apartments to the north, there is a little bit of a sprawling aspect in terms of impervious coverage to the north. Based off of our engineering division's review, they haven't found that there is any existing issues related to snow storage or drainage related to the senior apartments site specifically, and the snow storage hasn't been occurring on the southern portion of the project site. And as we move forward, if this project gets approved, we're proposing, or the applicants are proposing, snow storage will be shared between the two sites. So a lot of the snow storage will actually be moved to the northern portion of the property where the existing senior apartments are. And probably the main component, or the main topic of conversation tonight, will probably be the wetlands. There is an existing wetland to the south that was restored by Truckee River Watershed Council in 2017. It's protected by an existing earthen berm along the northern property line, which is between the proposed Estates Meadows project site and then the existing wetland. There is also an isolated wetland on the Estates Meadows project site. It's about 0.4 acres of freshwater wetland. And there are two larger lobes on either side of the property, as you can see on this exhibit, connected by a long linear wetland on the southern border. And then there are three smaller isolated wetlands on the western side of the property. Based off of our biologist's report, these wetlands do not connect to the Truckee River and is not considered federal waters. But a minor use permit is required here today because the project is within 200 feet of the wetland. And then this exhibit on the bottom of the screen shows where the main areas of where the project is closest to the wetlands. And we can go over that if you'd like. Ecosynthesis, the biologist who reviewed the wetland, who created the wetland report for the initial study, negative declaration, completed the impact analyses in April and July in 2021 and reviewed 4 categories: the possibility of increase or decrease in water quantity, alterations to water quality, possibility of disturbance of human activity versus wildlife, potential impacts during construction. As part of the original review of the project, they identified 3 mitigation measures for the project, which was reviewed in October, which included draining the concrete walkway into the wetland to maintain hydrology, erosion and sediment control, and preservation of the wetland during construction. Since the project design has been amended, Ecosynthesis reviewed the revised project design in April 2022 and confirmed that under the revised project design, since the concrete walkways that surrounded the wetland was removed, the hydrology of that small wetland would be sufficiently sustained without the need for mitigation measure number 2. So that mitigation measure is being proposed to be removed from the environmental document as part of this revised project. And then we've amended mitigation measure 4-3 to be 4-2, and then add in a clarification that excavation also includes removal of boulders directly abutting wetland boundaries, and that would be prohibited under the environmental document. And then mitigation measure number 4-4 was changed to mitigation measure 4-3 as part of the environmental document. And Truckee River Watershed Council was routed this new project design. They reviewed the revised project and did not note any additional comments than what they had before. They continue to support all of the mitigation measures and protection of wetlands, supported pre-construction meetings, which are part of the environmental document, filter and sediment fencing, continuous inspections throughout the project, life of the project construction, erosion control, and then prohibiting the use of metal mats during certain times of the year. The architecture of the project has changed since October. They have moved more to a traditional mountain design, moving away from the shed design. And the project is similar to other modular affordable housing designs, staff has found. The Planning Commission may discuss that point if you would like. They're proposing fiber cement and vinyl windows, along with accents of natural metal and natural materials like wood doors, wood railings, and posts with steel mesh panels. And these are also consistent with the Truckee affordable housing projects that are in the town currently. The project has also been modified to provide a pedestrian frontage along Estates Drive. Rather than facing interior to the project, it does have access from Estates Drive. And then the project is now 2 stories rather than 3 stories. There is one condition of approval staff is recommending. It's to move this Monterey taupe color, which in this sample doesn't look as light, but in other samples that I've seen online, they look fairly light. And so staff is recommending considering a darker earth tone color that blends more with the town's aesthetic, and then using a smooth fiber cement board rather than a faux wood grain to move away from mimicking natural materials and just letting it be a standalone material of its own. So we can go through these quickly, as I noted throughout the meeting in part, and there were notes also on this presentation that I didn't go over specifically. There have been changes to the project since 2021. First and foremost, the project has been converted from a standard affordable housing project to a senior affordable housing project, so it's would be restricted to people 55 years and older. They changed the mixture of bedroom types. Rather than having a mixture, they're moving to only 1-bedroom units. They reduced the building count from 4 buildings to 2 residential buildings. Previously, they had 3 residential buildings and a community building. The total building footprint was increased from 10,700 square feet to 13,000 square feet, probably primarily due to the change from 3-story to 2-story. They're proposing 72.5 square foot exterior private spaces on each of the residential units where there previously were none. They're reducing the building height from 3 stories to 2 stories, and that additional building height was a request in 2021 to modify to a taller standard than the standard 35 feet that we allow in our development code. They reduced the parking count from 50 to 46 spaces. However, they changed the bedroom type, so it's the actual ratio of what they're providing in terms of our parking standards has increased to 82% from, I believe, 76%. And they changed the parking lot to the majority of the parking lots is now one-way access. They removed the request for a rear yard reduction for residential buildings. It's only for the trash enclosure now. They removed the eastern building adjacent to the eastern lobe of the wetland, and now a parking lot is proposed next to that eastern wetland instead. They reduced the outdoor space from 2,700 square feet with play area, art grove, and turf area to a 1,400 square foot community patio. They oriented their entrances to Estates Drive, revised the design to remove shed roofs, and they have now included a washer-dryer unit in each residential unit rather than as a communal washer-dryer area. Since publication of the staff report, we've received 5 public comments. We've received some of the public comment from the last iteration of the project in your packet. We've received public comment from Damon, Jesse, Colin, Sarah, Katie, and Gretchen Corbin. All of them were concerned about the potential impacts to the wetlands. Some were concerned about impacts to the traffic and parking. traffic on Estates Drive and parking, the lack of parking proposed in the project. And then some were concerned about the design and the community compatibility. And then we did receive concern about snow storage and potential conflicts with the airport. Staff, with the help of Rainey, our consultants, Rainey, we prepared an initial study, mitigated negative declaration, where we found that there could be potential impacts to biological resources, cultural resources, geology and soils, hydrology and water quality, transportation, and tribal cultural resources in that document. And mitigation measures were incorporated along with the mitigation monitoring and reporting program, which have been included in your resolution. Additionally, because there was a project description modification before the actual adoption of the environmental document, we had to review the project in terms of whether or not there was a significant change to the project that would impact the environmental document. Based off of staff and the consultant's review, we determined that the project changes were not substantial revisions per the CEQA guidelines per section 15073.5, and a recirculation of the negative declaration was not required per that section. The revised project would not result in any new significant effects or require new mitigation measures that must be added to reduce such effects. In fact, we removed one mitigation measure. The applicants have changed the building design so the building height complies. The conversion from standard multifamily to senior multifamily would reduce vehicle miles traveled for that project. And then in order to commemorate all of this information, we created a memo and erratum that we have included as part of your resolution at the end of your environmental document. So today, based off of the findings that you see in the draft findings in your resolution, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission adopt Resolution 2021-10, approving adoption of a MND, approval of the project amendment to the development permit, approval of the minor use permit, approval of the plan development, and the tentative map based on the findings and subject to the conditions of approval. As always, there are alternatives for the Planning Commission to consider. You may continue the public hearing to a date and time certain. You can request additional information from staff or the applicant. You can add or modify the conditions. You may deny the project on the basis that one or more of the required findings cannot be made. But we should note that this project is subject to the Housing Accountability Act, which is a state legislation that does require us to make specific findings if we do want to deny a project, or you can require additional environmental review. And should you take action tonight, the appeal period to the Town Council would be submitted to the Planning Division by Friday, May 27th at 5:00 p.m. And I'm here for questions, and the applicants are here to give a brief presentation.
Okay, thanks, Yumi. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and hear from the applicant at this point then.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Passador. I represent the nonprofit potential developer for the Truckee Meadows property, Cascade Housing Association. I actually function as their property manager here in Truckee, and they've asked me to not only introduce their consultants, but to express their appreciation to members of the Planning Commission. Thank you to each of you, to the town staff for their exhaustive assistance in helping bring about the latest version of this property. As Yumi's done an outstanding job of identifying, it's quite different than it was 6 or 8 months ago when many of us sat in the same room and talked about utilizing this relatively small piece of land to try to address a rather overwhelming shortage of housing here in Truckee. And we appreciate all that members of the Planning Commission and the town are doing, as well as a number of agencies here within the town that have been consulted over the last several months. Cascade Housing Association has asked me to share, just by way of background, the Truckee Donner Senior Apartments, which has this excess land, is something that they acquired back in 1998. And literally, the discussion about what to do with leftover land started very shortly thereafter. Prior to their 1998 purchase of the property, they developed the Truckee Pines Apartments, which started in 1994 and finally opened in early 1996. These are very time-consuming, very detailed processes, and clearly we're experiencing that again with looking at this piece of property and trying to figure out how to leverage its availability and its proximity to other community assets and venues to try to make better use of it, particularly as affordable housing. I think the development team has done a great job, and Yumi's identified how the evolution of this serves now a senior resident population, which the property manager in me can't step out in front of a microphone and not mention to you that in my visit today to the Truckee Donner Senior Apartments, which will have 6 to 8 residents move out in the next year for all kinds of reasons that we might understand, has a waiting list today of 122 people. So it's a very, very long wait. It is a wait that, frankly, many of our applicants can't last long enough, and they leave the community. These may be people with deep roots to the community, but who simply cannot relieve themselves of the responsibility of a large home and stay as a member of the community in something that fits their evolving housing needs. They simply must move for a lack of other options. As I mentioned, the commissioners, the town, other agencies have provided a lot of really good input, and you'll hear from some other people about exactly what that means. But responding to the need for senior housing is as valid today as it's ever been, based on the waiting list and the aging of the local population, and really the aging of all communities' population. So I look forward to hearing the presentation to complement what Yumi has already offered, and I will certainly be available if there are questions that I can answer on behalf of Cascade Housing Association regarding the development, or on behalf of our company regarding the operation of the development. So with that, I'll turn it over to the design team and let them provide you more information and hopefully answer questions that arise.
Thanks, Jeff.
Hello, I'm David Burke, project architect with JK Architecture Engineering out of Tahoe City. Yumi, if you want to go to the next slide. So I just wanted to start out by talking or going over what we've changed from the previous proposal. So if you look at the slide in front of you, the red diagonally hatched area is the footprint of the previous buildings. And then there are red dashed lines which show the outline of the previous parking layout. So as Yumi noted before, we previously had 4 buildings which sort of surrounded the parking on 3 sides. And we've consolidated the buildings into 2 buildings. So we removed the building which was on the easternmost side of the project, and we consolidated the 2 buildings on the westernmost side of the project into 1 building on that side. In doing so, we moved the buildings further away from the wetlands, at least on the east side there, and we gave a little more buffer around the isolated wetland sort of in the building A wraps around. We also reduced the height of the buildings to 2 stories, and by moving from a mixture of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom buildings, we have reduced the total floor area by about 25%, from approximately 32,500 to 25,400. Yumi noted that we increased the footprint by consolidating those buildings and reducing them from about 10,700 to approximately 13,000. I would like to note that if we considered all the exterior circulation space, which was directly adjacent to the units and actually multiple stories, the footprint of the previous project would have been 12,400 and change. So a very small increase in, I would say, apparent footprint of the project, but a considerable reduce in the bulk by reducing the floor area by about 25%. If we want to move to the next slide. This site plan shows the site unencumbered by the other overlay. When we went to one bedrooms, we kind of, basically had an opportunity to completely rethink the architecture. But we did stay with the basic site concept, as it was something that we had worked with town staff on for over a year, and we're pretty comfortable that it was appropriate for the site and the proposed development. Next slide. Looking at the floor plans of Building A, we have lower floor on the right, upper floor on the left. Each of these buildings is set up with units across a double-loaded corridor and with a community space and bike storage on the lower floor, which is in the blue section. Next slide. Looking at the exterior, we can see that we've taken a sort of traditional approach there, where we have a carrying gable running across the two wings of the building and secondary gables which provide articulation, identification of the individual units, and protection from snow shedding. Particularly at the outdoor spaces. We have also developed a more dominant entry element with larger gable and then secondary gable down at the lower floor to relate better to human scale. Next slide. If we look at Building B, which is in the middle of the project, that building's basically rectangular in form. We have the main entry, which is on the lower floor on the right-hand side there in the blue, slightly off-centered. We also have an entry on the south side of the project, so related to the parking, as well as entry/exits at either end. And looking at this, you can see a fairly straightforward building design with a central gabled roof, secondary gables once again defining the units, providing protection of snow shed, and a larger gable which is identifying the entry slightly off-center. And with that, I'm going to leave it to Adrian to discuss the wetlands and our approach to protecting them.
Thank you, Mr. Burke.
Hi, I've been introduced. I'm Adrian Jancosa. I've been doing wetlands work since 1988, including many wetland delineations right here in town and impact studies all over the U.S. and, in fact, in the tropics as well. So I have a lot of experience seeing projects far from wetlands and projects close to wetlands and what you have to do about it. Is there a... I don't have a pointer, but I think I can describe in words what we need to. The wetland within the parcel is contiguous with the large wetland. It's not the same as some of the comments implied that this is the same wetland that Truckee Watershed Council did restoration work within, and it isn't. It's a different wetland. It is contiguous. it's at the corner and in a downstream direction, but the project is not in that wetland, and it's not even in the wetlands on the parcel site. It's outside, very close by. There is a berm. There are several berms. You can see them in orange on this graphic, and they prevent drainage from within the site from going into the wetlands. The project, I believe we're going to hear about the engineering, that the drainage all goes away from the wetlands. You do not have urban drainage going into any of the wetland areas. And in the areas where construction will be very close to the wetlands, the project design has been changed so that there will not be the deep excavation that would have been needed to put a building next to the wetland you see toward the right there, FEW-1. It's all contiguous except for those small spots in the west end. But near that, where it says DP-5, there used to be a building right next to that, and that would have required deep excavation, and now that's parking which does not require deep excavation, and it slopes away. So that's a big change in terms of comments that we heard, which were strong comments. I thought they were good comments. So I think there is also construction close to the wetland along the southern boundary. It's also parking lot. It's not buildings with deep foundation. And I've discussed this sort of indirectly, but discussed this with the geotechnical engineers who have confirmed that does not require deep excavation or removal of any expansive clay should it occur right there. There is a line of boulders, several lines of boulders along the southern boundary and also the eastern boundary, the right side of the parcel. And those boulders, they're part of those berms, but they're also outside of the berms. They're these big boulders. And as Yumi noted, the mitigation measure basically prohibiting direct disturbance of wetlands has been clarified to indicate that removal of a boulder that's actually directly abutting the wetland would be likely to result in direct impacts on the wetland. So those boulders that actually directly abut would not be allowed to be removed. Either the project can work around them, or portions can be split off using drilling holes in those expansive compounds that are routinely used. So, Yumi mentioned the meadow mats, and the previous design with buildings close to the wetlands, you need to work on the exterior parts of buildings. And so they were going to have equipment outside the building, and that meant sitting in the wetland. Heavy equipment machines work in wetlands routinely in many areas of the country, and even here, a lot of Truckee River Watershed Council's restoration projects require heavy equipment to go smack right out into the middle of the wetland to improve it, to move dirt and to improve that wetland. And when they do that, they use these meadow mats, which you place on top of a firm surface, and you can run equipment out on it, and it does not damage the wetland. Then they're removed when the equipment leaves. So under the current design, that equipment wouldn't need to operate out there. Probably there will never be any need for meadow mats, but should they be needed, there's still a condition that they would only be used after the wetlands dry out. So I'm happy to answer any questions an hour later, but I hope that addresses some of the concerns that were quite justifiably raised.
Thanks, Adrian.
Hi, good evening. My name is Carla Samus. I'm a civil engineer with Truckee Architectural Engineer. And I'll be very brief because most of it was already covered, but I just wanted to kind of emphasize again that everything we did design-wise, and especially grading and drainage-wise, was done in close coordination with town engineering and with Adrian and the geotech team to minimize as much as possible potential impacts to the wetland. And that included the general grading of the site is a little bit above existing ground. So, and that goes for building finished floors and parking walkways, so that we're avoiding digging, especially in the areas close to the wetland, that we're avoiding excavation. So it's an average like a foot and a half above, and it's high points at the center, and then it drains east-west, but all towards state meadows. Nothing is drained towards any of the wetlands. And we, again, worked extensively with engineering to come up with the best stormwater treatment design that is all along the frontage of the project, again, away from wetlands. And we are proposing, pretty much typical BMPs, temporary construction BMPs that are provided in any construction site, but with emphasis of isolating the wetlands all the way where contractors would be working so they have, not only, again, the site doesn't drain, it all drains north mostly, but that it provides a visual barrier a physical barrier there to avoid disturbance to the wetland. And this is landscape. I'm definitely not a landscape architect, but I'll pass along what Laura Mello, the project landscape architect, mentioned. She'd like me to point out that the wetlands will have a 42-inch split rail fencing all the way around it with signage to keep people away from it. The landscaping along the frontage was pulled back, so we put the sidewalk closer to the curb, pulled the landscaping back to address engineering concerns along States Drive. And the planting along, around near the wetland is all wetland that would support, type of planting that would support the wetland environment. And last on the fencing, that the common area would have a 6-foot metal fencing around it. And that is it.
Thanks, Carla. Okay, so I assume that's it from the applicant team? Great, thank you very much. All right, so let's go ahead and move into commission clarifying questions for staff. And then we can follow up with clarifying questions for the applicant. Susie, would you like to ask your questions to staff?
Thank you, Mr. Gove. I would love to. I will need a minute to get my notes up. Okay. So let's see, there's a couple questions that have just come up during this. How many actual patios are there on the ground? Is it like 15 because there's 30 apartments? Is that right? No, how many apartments? 30, right?
It'd be, yes, 15.
Okay. So, I might have to ask the applicant this, but can you explain to me again, there's the berm on the outside of the wetland, and there's boulders just outside the wetland. We're not allowed to move the boulders. Are we allowed to move the berms? Or are the berms staying there?
The berms are staying there.
The berms stay.
I would confirm.
I'll confirm. Okay.
Yeah.
So, what I was surprised to see in one of those maps that we pulled up with the red outlines, it looks like the southern edge of the parking lot is now closer to the wetland. Can you pull up that map with the red outline again? Not that one. Thank you. Okay, so that is indeed true. The current parking lot is closer to the wetland than it was in that red outline previously. Are you guys seeing what I'm seeing?
Yeah, no, but it's if you're talking about on the east side of the project.
I'm talking about on the south edge.
That's what it looks like. Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Let me come over here. So there was something in the staff report that said that the property was sloped gently to the south. So that was just a typo then?
It was from their wetland delineation report, so wetland impact reports, I may defer that to Adrian, but I believe that the natural topography drains to the south is what that water quantity section was referring to. So anything that's not touching the graded areas, the impervious areas will naturally slope down. But because the civil and the engineering for the project will change the grading so that where it's improved, it'll grade towards Estates Drive or towards a bioretention facility or a trench. I don't know if we could also defer that to Adrian and to Carla to clarify.
Okay, I'll have him clarify that later as well. Thank you. I spoke with Yumi already today, and she answered many of these questions, so I'm trying to not go through those again. That's for the applicant. That's all I have for staff. I have a lot for applicant. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair Tarnay. Commissioner Riley, clarifying questions for staff?
I only have questions for the applicant.
Fair enough. Commissioner Miller.
I only have a couple. A couple months ago, I want to say, we reviewed a project where we were not allowed to oppose the project because it was affordable. Could you please remind me what is different about this 100% affordable project where it's subject to different standards?
Well, this project is asking for a planned development. If you're speaking of a Frischman Hollow, is that the other? I don't know which other.
Sorry, the one on 89 at the old Highway Patrol? Yeah.
Oh, see. That is a state project.
Thank you.
And that is why we don't
Always
have any
learning
power.
something. This is such a fun job for that.
And that was state-owned property.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you. And my other question, in part of the staff presentation, there was mention of concern about people walking across the wetland. How much is that a concern? And if someone wanted to build a boardwalk, would that be allowable in the wetland? A boardwalk to connect the project from the back end to the path.
Something that would span the wetland? Likely not.
I mean, Adrian's probably the best person to answer, but based on prior projects we've seen, it's probably pretty unlikely that we would get a boardwalk spanning the wetland in particular because it affects plants and they have less access to sunlight, and then that impacts the functionality of the wetland. But I'm certainly not a biologist by any means.
So say we all. How concerned is, I saw some no nods, but how concerned are staff about people walking that stretch with that?
There was, the concern that I brought up in the presentation was if we decided, we thought that we should put more parking on the site to meet the 100% requirements. The only place that, under this current design, that I see where we could potentially accommodate it is on the eastern side of the property, east of the wetlands. And human nature just makes you want to walk the quickest distance, and that would potentially create more trampling of the wetlands.
So that was a comment about walking east-west across
Yes.
that section, not, okay, well, great, that's it for my questions, thank you.
I'm sorry, I found just two tiny ones here real quick. So our condition of approval reads at the very back, by no later than 2 years from May 30th, 2024. I think we're accidentally adding 2 extra years in there. I think it's supposed to be either from May 2022 or until May 2024. Is that correct?
Which page of the resolution?
I don't know. It's condition of approval 4.
May 30th, 2024. Yes, so they have 2 years to work on their project, to actually pull building permits, put in foundations.
So I think we should change the wording there then, because it says by no later than 2 years from May 2024. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, super. And then just one quick question. Condition of approval 13 has a construction mitigation monitoring fee. Is that, I'm not sure I've heard of that before. Is that just because this has the wetland there?
No, every project that comes before you, or even like any new construction project generally requires a construction mitigation monitoring fee. And that's mostly for us to be able to go out there and do inspections and make sure they're.
So it's not specific to the mitigation measures. It's, okay, thank you.
Okay, so that, let's see, I've just got a couple quick questions here myself. Moving away from the faux wood grain, in that product, what was the logic behind that?
Moving from requesting smooth fiber cement instead of, our design guidelines support not trying to mimic natural materials and instead using, if you're not going to use a natural material, just to let it stand on its own merit and not try to be wood when it's not.
And was that like a shiplap type of product?
It's just fiber cement, hardy board.
Regardless of what size it was?
Regardless,
Okay.
yes.
Is there any details on what the window frames, material, and colors are going to be?
I believe it's a vinyl window, and I think they called out bronze, but I would defer to Dave Burke on that.
Okay, very good. Thank you. That's all the questions I have. So we'll move into clarifying questions for the applicant. If the applicant team wants to circle about the podium there so we can answer questions, we'll go ahead and get started with Vice Chair Tarnay.
Thank you, Chair Gove. Well, let's stick on that. Can we go to the picture of the color for the Estates Drive buildings? So which one is the taupe you're talking about? Is that the lower one?
It's, I believe, the upper color. It's the vertical. So it's not rendered.
The yellowy one? Which one? I don't know which one.
I believe it's the one that's rendered as yellow. And then the material that I've shown on the right, the sample, is what I pulled off of the James Hardy website. There are other pictures on that website that seem to indicate that it might be lighter, but I don't know exactly. I think it would have to take an actual sample for us to know.
Our applicant team, you don't happen to have any color samples with you, do you?
We did not bring an actual color sample, though we are not opposed to changing the color to something which is acceptable to staff.
Super.
I just have a follow-up question on that material. Is this an integral color material or is this a painted product?
It's a painted product, so, Hardy board, you can have it pre-painted from the factory, which is Monterey taupe is one of those colors. I think we would prefer to, work within the pre-painted colors if possible.
Very good, thanks.
Thank you. There's going to be scattershot questions sort of on all different people who are going to answer, but will there be applicants as a couple to this project, or will it just be single residents?
We're kind of predicting the future, but we can use the Truckee Donner Senior Apartments as a good indicator. In the last 25 years, we probably have never been more than 5% two occupant households. It's almost always entirely single occupants in an age-restricted property, and that extends beyond Truckee to just the nature of this type of housing.
Okay, and then, do you know that if it is a couple, like, they both have to qualify as 50% of the area median income or 60% together?
All household income standards are for the household, so it would be the combined income for all members.
Great, thank you.
Susie, can I have a follow-up on the age thing?
Of course.
Just, regarding, is the existing Truckee Donner Senior Apartments, are they a 55 and over, or are they an older requirement in terms of age?
The existing Truckee Donner property actually operates with a federal government overlay, which not only says 62 and older, but it also says that regardless of age, people with qualifying disabilities are eligible to live there. So we do from time to time find households that are heads of households in their 20s and 30s moving in under that disability exemption to age.
Okay. But that would not apply to this project because this is not a federal project. This would just fall under the 55 and older requirement.
The age restriction does not imply persons with disabilities. Part of that evolves based on funding and financing, but at this stage it's intended to be age restricted only.
And age and income restricted.
Age and income, which also means rental rate limited.
Okay, thank you.
So so I have done construction inspection, and I understand the excavation for parking is not as deep as for a building footing, but it's still a couple feet, isn't it? Does anyone know? Oh, since we're adding, you answered that since we're adding.
Like I said before, so the finished grade is already about 1.5 feet above existing ground. And the structural section for pavement, if you're going really heavy duty, it's 4 inches over 8. So that's 12 inches. And so you just compacting subgrade per the geotechnical, wouldn't have to remove any underlying clay soils. So you're pretty much just clearing the surface, compacting, and then building up from there with our proposed finished grades.
Okay, and then Adrian might have to answer this, but with the clay soils, that's an issue, isn't it, with heave? Or is there not clay soils here, or are there clay soils? Doesn't that create the heave with the wet and dry cycle?
Do you want to answer that? I can, or Pam, if you want to address that, but it should be not more than it is with regular pavement.
So the clay soils are at depth, they're not at the surface. So there's a fill on top of the clay soil, so it's not going to affect the pavement. Plus the pavement will be really well drained to reduce that problem.
Okay, thank you. I think so. At depth, how far was that depth?
I
think it's 7 feet.
Yeah, it goes to 7 feet, but it goes from like 2 to 7 feet roughly.
Huh, okay. All right. Can someone explain did you have a question?
I have a follow-up question about that, Clay. So there's, what mitigation measures are you going to do I mean, do you have to over-X and recompact on top of that, or?
Not under the parking lot?
Okay.
Does that
So
answer your question?
you'll just treat it under the buildings, though?
Yeah, so under the buildings, it's only going to be treated directly under the footings,
Okay,
not under the slabs.
got it. Okay, thank you.
Can someone talk to me about the 6-inch metal fencing around the common area? That's around a patio surrounded by a solid metal fence? did we have a picture of that?
I don't think we have a picture of it. Do we have a picture of it? But it's not along the patios. It's just along the, Building A has the community building, room, kind of, do you want me to point?
Yes, please, thank you.
So it's about in here. So there's a community patio in here. That's all there is. I don't think it's meant to be a solid fence.
And it is around the patio, or it is not around the patio?
Not around the individual patios for each unit, but the common patio, yes.
This is the fence that's in here in the document currently. I don't know if this is what your landscape architect was thinking. It wasn't called out in the landscaping plan.
Yeah, I think that's what she meant by it. It just has, a barrier around that patio.
Okay.
With gates, probably.
Okay, and is that to keep people from walking in those little wetland areas outside the, can we go back to that map? Sorry, Yumi. So that fence or gate is around the patio to keep people from going into those wetland areas?
Actually, I believe it's more of a security fencing to keep people out of the common area from just wandering into that space.
Oh, okay. And Yumi, while this map is up, where is is it bioswales or retention facilities, or where is everything draining to on the north?
I can answer that.
That would be great. Thank you.
So we're talking earlier about drainage of the site. So about right here, it's a 50 contour. It's a 52 or whatever, but 50 contour for reference. Site's pretty flat in general, but this is a 50. There's a contour here. This is a 49. There's a little bit of 49 here. That's a 49, and that's a 48. Going down here, this is a 48. This is a mound. So existing ground generally drains this way. So northeast and northwest are the low points. We maintain that. So this is high point, and it flows around this way. And the bioswales, the infiltrate vegetative swales, are here and along here. And I don't think we have anything in here. It's just here and here. So this is a valley gutter, so it's picking up parking lot and draining in that way. Oh, there is one here, actually.
Great, thank you. And those are, so it's a surface facility, it's not an underground?
Surface, nothing underground.
Excellent. I have to pull up some notes now. Okay. Let me go down. Okay, that one we did. Okay, and we don't have the landscape architect here, is that correct? I did have a little bit of questions. To me, it looks like there are trees that are being planted right on the edge of the wetland. It seems like that would require disturbing the wetland, or can you tell me how far those trees are from the wetland?
Again, I'm definitely not a landscape architect, but she did ask me to emphasize that, so anything that's planted near the wetlands, it's not in the wetlands, and that is all beneficial to the wetland environment. Also, she handpicked everything that's going really close to the wetland to complement that environment.
I did actually Google the trees that are located right there. They were called AMUR, A-M-U-R, maples. It looked like it's not a native species to North America and possibly an invasive. I don't know if we can look at that a little bit further. So I'm just concerned about that not being a native species. It did look like it was wetland appropriate. So anyway, that would be great if we could. Hey, Mr. Juncosa, do you think you could cover just a little bit of the wetland stuff? There's a sentence in our report that says, upon review of the revised project design, Ecosynthesis has confirmed that the hydrology of the small wetland would be sufficiently sustained without the need for MMIV2. Therefore, it's been deleted. So what was the reason that is something changed, or was it just a reassessment of what was there?
Something has changed, and that is that there's no longer an impervious surface closely abutting that small, as wetland biologists we usually call them, postage stamp wetlands. But I mean, they're still valuable, but they are these little isolated spots, and they merit special attention because some of those are very much dependent on the immediate watershed. I don't want to go into a huge digression about the hydrology of these wetlands. However, these overall, the wetlands on the site are supported primarily, not really by getting runoff from the surrounding uplands, but by incident precipitation and snowmelt from snow that fell there, sat there, and then melted. Also by inflows, kind of the whole system here backs up from where those arrows are on the far right of the drawing there. And it's all like a huge big swamp to this wonderful to the south. But those small ones on the western end to the left there, there's relatively high groundwater, and when that is supplemented by incident precipitation, you get wetlands in those spots and not elsewhere. It's a marginal call in and out everywhere there. With the removal of those concrete walkways, there's additional watershed. It's not a lot, but when you increase the diameter by a little bit, that's a lot of area because it's the bigger circle. Of any circle, something like half the area is in the outermost 10% or some small number. So just increasing the setback of impervious makes a big difference.
Super, thank you. That's a lovely explanation. And so we do have the gable roofs on that side draining down towards that, and that's what we want, correct?
Yes, and they'll have to manage that water, but wherever that water goes, it's going to end up supplying all the wetlands in that side of the site.
Okay, and then one more thing that you just said was that the water backs up and it's a delightful, healthy wetland. It appears that there's that May 1st date. October to May is considered the wet season, and then after May 1st, they can do work in there, but it's still fairly wet now, isn't it? Should we be concerned about that May 1st date?
Things are fairly wet. Things are actually wet. It was a really weird winter. But that late precipitation out where I live in Glenshire, there are things that are normally bone dry by now, and even the upland plants are now coming up in them, and there was still standing water there just 2 days ago. So it's kind of weird this year. I couldn't speak for the sort of the contractor side of things, but if there was a concern about that, changing that date to a later date would probably be viable from a contractor standpoint. Personally, I'm not that concerned about it, but I'm also comfortable with that date being a little later, especially since there's so little work that might require them anyway. They can easily schedule that during the driest part of the year.
Okay, great. So you're not concerned, it's not something that concerns you as a wetland scientist that May 1st date is too early. That's not one of your concerns.
It's not a great concern because say work goes on in wetlands. When we do restoration work in this area, we put down mats while there's still quite a bit of water. Plants are green. It's a minor temporary impact. Right when you pick the mats up, you might look at it and go, whoa, those plants are trashed. But by the end of the season or the following year, you can't even tell it happened. So, they're rhizomatous plants. They can take a year being not the greatest year and then bounce right back fine.
Oh, great.
And I have seen that happen, in fact, in my own yard, when I inadvertently covered some plants at the wrong time.
Great, thank you. That covers, I think, my wetland questions for now. I have one more question for the developer side of things. Can you pull up the picture of, the site plan of the actual apartment layouts? There seems to be some little squares inside the front door, and I don't know if you can zoom in, or little rectangles there that appear closed. It's not like a closet or something. Yeah, what's going on there?
Those are closets for the individual units to provide additional storage, which otherwise didn't really work well within the unit.
It is an actual closet, the one with the X in it and then the rectangle below it?
Oh, no, I'm sorry, that's a mechanical space.
Okay, mechanical, but then the one below it is a closet? Or is that mechanical as well?
That is, that's for mechanical as well. Yeah.
Are you sure?
To tell you the truth, we're probably generous with the space available for mechanical for this, as we haven't done mechanical design, and so it's a placeholder. So anything that wouldn't be necessary for mechanical, we're certainly going to turn into cabinetry or, storage space.
Perfect. They are tiny, tiny little apartments. If that were a little coat closet or something, it might be useful. I did just want to say to you guys as well that I super appreciate having the independent washer and dryer in each apartment. I think that's awesome. And that's all my questions for now.
Thank you, Vice Chair Tarnay. Commissioner Riley?
Thank you. I have a few questions. My first question probably is for the development team, or the architecture and engineer team. So it relates to runoff from the paved area, specifically the paved area to the east that kind of butts the closest to that main wetland. Yeah, where the hand is. Is there a plan to have like a trench drainage, or I know you had mentioned kind of sloping everything away, but will there be some kind of edging or treatment kind of between the pavement and the unimproved area?
Nope. There is a curb there, and right up against the wetland, and then from there slopes towards that valley gutter in the center.
Okay.
Nothing slopes out.
So it's sloping towards that central, okay, I didn't notice that. And then with regards to the split rail fence, is that the Xed line?
Yes.
Okay, so have you considered, and would you consider, and maybe we as a planning commission might discuss this, just putting a split rail fence around the entirety of that area, the unimproved area, that would border the parking up to the north and around to the east of the property and then to the south? So it isn't this, it just feels kind of hodgepodgey in design. And why wouldn't you just kind of delineate the put the fence kind of more orthogonal with the parking area?
Yes, we're definitely open to that. I think my only cause for pause is that not going too far north, because we have the stormwater treatment there and they need to access it for maintenance.
Yeah.
But beyond that, yeah.
So that's something that we could discuss.
Yep.
If there was openness to maybe create a more linear design.
Yep.
Okay, great. And then, let's see, and then with regards to the signage, there was mention of signage of, I think, protecting the wetlands. Is that kind of sporadic around the site or specific locations?
Yeah, the thought is that would be spread along the entire length of the fence. This says wetland, keep out, or whatever wording.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe a certain number, so it's not just like a sea of signage?
Exactly. There would
okay.
be space throughout.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then with regard, maybe Adrian can answer this, maybe you can, Carla. You kind of mentioned this earlier about with regards to the construction of the site, and I want to kind of go back and say I'm so appreciative of everything that's been done. I feel like many of the concerns that were raised at that October meeting have been addressed in very significant and substantive ways. This isn't very common, and I really commend this team for these efforts. I mean, I still have some concerns about the wetlands, but that's what this is about. With regards to kind of the construction of the parking area, again, that's kind of encroaching towards that wetland, is it possible to avoid disturbance of that area and be doing the construction more from within than on the outside? Or you're nodding your head, and I think Carla was nodding.
Adrian adds if he needs to, but yeah, that's the thought, that you're going from, the parking lot area, working from there and not going around the other side.
Okay, and then there was talk of the meadow mats, which I've heard mentioned before. Okay, and then I have another question. I don't know if this is for Jeff or for the design team. Maybe it's for the staff. Jeff mentioned there's a wait list currently for the senior housing across the street, upwards of 122 people. I'm well aware this is an extremely needed project. We've been talking about senior housing for many, many years, as long as I've been here. So I see the need. Is it possible to put any kind of a prioritization on people who live or people who are working in the TTUSD or local boundaries or have lived here? So we're not kind of making an existing problem worse by just having an open application process.
There has been and there will continue to be discussions regarding a thoughtful locals preference. Mm-hmm. It needs to not probably be conditioned on place of employment, but maybe current residents' roots in the area. And yeah, we've got 122 of them waiting across the street.
Yeah, okay. Well, I appreciate that. I'm hopeful that that could be really implemented. And then
I'm sorry, Jeff, I forgot to ask this earlier, but you said that you currently are a property manager in town. Is that at the senior center?
Yes, we manage the Truckee Donner Senior Apartments immediately across the street, Truckee Pines, which are located next door, and at the north end of town, we manage Hennis Flats, Frischman Hollow, and Frischman Hollow Phase 2. We also manage one small additional property for a total of somewhere in the 350 rental unit kind of size here in Truckee.
You manage all of them?
Kind of, sort of.
Okay, thank you.
Are you done with? Oh, okay. I am curious about snow storage. This is a big Truckee issue. I'm sure many people are aware of Mount Truckee and the rail yard that's slowly getting smaller, drains to the Trout Creek. Snow storage. What's the plan? Because there's a lot of paving here.
Yep. Our expectation is there'll be a very detailed snow management plan that we will present to our snow removal contractor. We work with Nathan Rupert's organization and have for 15 years. He manages the snow removal or snow storage for the other sites. And it's a challenge, and you get it right, and then you don't deviate very far. So in fact, we stick right to the agreements that are reached that are appropriate for each site. They're all very much individual site developed. This is a property where we frankly expect we'll have extra parking, so we think we'll be in extra good shape. Many of the seniors won't own cars. Mm-hmm. There's a really active public transit stop that's just recently been expanded. So we'll probably have some pretty easy sailing when it comes to snow management on the site.
So on the existing senior housing, the snow storage is shown in like the teal or the turquoise color?
Yeah.
And is it sufficiently stored on the property to date?
We have never had a difficult time storing snow at Truckee Donner, and often don't use more than half of those areas.
Okay. My concern, kind of why I'm talking about this, I'm concerned that the snow would be pushed into the wetlands and the periphery of this property.
Yeah, it can't happen because it shouldn't happen, and because there'll be barriers, whether those be landscape barriers or fence barriers. It just
Real fence.
Yeah, it can't go there.
So if we saw that happening, we would let the people in
We
power
would all
know.
be intervening.
Okay, good to know. Let's see, I think I had does this project have elevators? I wasn't sure I saw that. Yes, there are, okay. I figured they were probably required. Let's see, and then, yeah, I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Hey, Commissioner Miller?
Maybe this is a question directed to Jeff. Why bring the laundry into the units?
Seniors aren't always capable of carrying laundry across the parking lot, and it is a nice feature. We don't have that feature in properties built in an earlier evolution of rental housing, but it's more and more about resident convenience and safety, particularly in Truckee where, outside it can get kind of slippery and not particularly friendly to carrying laundry.
Was there any concern about the cost of those as opposed to having one communal one in each building?
It's a very, very expensive upgrade.
And that's one that the team is comfortable with?
That's one that they've prioritized.
Okay, that's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, great. So I think that covers all the questions at this point, yeah? All right, with that, we'll go ahead and move into public comment. Anybody that wants to make a public comment about this agenda item may do so. Please step on up to the podium, state your name, and fill out a comment card. And you're limited to 3 minutes.
Do we fill out the card before?
You can fill out the card afterwards. You can come on up.
All right. My name is Barbara Ramsey, and I am a member of the Truckee Senior Community Committee. We're a grassroots committee trying to make Truckee very senior-friendly. And I attended the October 19th meeting here. I have visited the site. I have talked to neighbors. I have done a lot of research. I have sent emails after the October 19th meeting to the Planning Commission and to the Town Council. And I must, like you already have done, I want to applaud the move that you have made to change this from a 3-unit overbuilt lot to a 2-unit lot for seniors. And it has been said very well here that senior housing is really, really dire in this area and much, much needed. So, I'm not going to take up too much more time because I am very pleased with what I see. I would say that I would like to reemphasize the parking that you seem all very concerned about. And in doing my research and talking to people in the area, that the public transit station, which is right across from this development, is the busiest, most used transit station in all of Truckee. So if we're concerned about parking and we're dealing with seniors, I think you can rest assured that you're safer with this type of situation than you were originally. And so I'm very pleased with that. Personally, someone who's also very concerned about the wetlands, I'm always hearing that you're making it a bad place to be. And I will say, as a senior and visiting the lot and seeing all the wildlife there and seeing the birds and seeing that the landscaping needs to be wildlife friendly, bird friendly, and it needs to be in sync with what's there. And the neighbors used it as more of a park of visiting and seeing what wildlife are there. So I would really like to see maybe some natural signage for there to be maybe a bench or two for people. There's ponds. I mean, they're just absolutely lovely ponds with beautiful views, and to really use that aesthetic and not make this a residence with landscaping, but really say this is an extension of a beautiful place. So with that, I'll stop. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ramsey. Okay, anybody else? Public comment? Come on up.
Hi there. My name is Jesse Quay. I live on Ponderosa Golf Course on Reynolds Way. And I just wanted to vocalize my opposition to the development. I want to thank Yumi for being a conduit for all the comments and from the neighborhood over the last 6 months plus. Yeah, it's an environmentally sensitive wetland that was restored back in 2017. It cost almost $2 million of community funds to make this really nice area welcoming to wildlife and amphibians, and it's this beautiful place. It's not a place for a two-story development in the middle of it, and that's big picture. I know there's a lot of really hard work going into the civil engineering and the hydrology. In a previous life, I was a geologist and a hydrologist and a wetland scientist. A lot of really solid work going into, okay, mitigating this and mitigating that. A project should not be here. It should be somewhere else. I understand that the commission has that balance, having to house more than 100 seniors on waiting lists. I get it. I work for a solar company. We've worked on more than 1,500 affordable housing projects throughout California. I get the balance is there, but building on a wetland, even if it's a postage stamp wetland, on the side of the other wetland, it's part of this basin. It's part of a buffer. And as climate change continues, as the snowfall gets weirder and weirder in October, in May, we need these buffers. We can't put pavement and housing in these buffers especially. There are other places in Truckee for projects like this. I know it's difficult to do entitlements. I know it's difficult to do the EIRs. This is not the place. We're trying to shoehorn in people who need homes. I get it. Not here. Okay, that's my NIMBY comment. But if you go by on Brockway and you look down towards the east, it is one of the most beautiful settings in all of Truckee. It's gorgeous. You have the seasonal wetland, you got the meadow, you got the trees, and then you got the backdrop of the mountains. It is absolutely beautiful. Now you're putting a big development right in the middle of it. It's an awful idea. It's an awful idea. Do not do it. Yeah, I mean, that's basically the gist of it. I sense the balance. I know where, we're trying to mitigate everything. This is not the place. So I'll see the rest of my time.
Thank you, Mr. Quay.
Do I give this to you, or do I give that to you?
So my name's Lana. I live on Ponderosa Golf Course, and this ecosystem has lots of wildlife, and my family really loves going to this place and walking on the path next to it, and it has. And in the spring, it fills up with water, and ducks go in it, and birds are there, and it's a really special place for the community, and it's a really beautiful environment, and it should be there, and it helps animals, and yeah.
Good job, Lana. Thank you very much for participating.
Oh man, Lana, I have hope for the future. That was really impressive. Thank you. I needed that. So, man, my heart goes out to everybody who's voiced concerned about the wetlands. We did work very hard on preserving that area. So I'm not going to speak to that.
Can you state your name for us?
Oh, yes. My name is Cheryl. We do need the housing. We do need to get 122 people in affordable housing here in Truckee. We need a lot of people in affordable housing. And I really appreciate your question about, is priority going to go to locals? And I really want to speak to that because we are bringing people from out of town into the housing that we have approved, and it is a burden on our healthcare system that's already incredibly burdened. We can't meet the need to what is here, and so we can't do it. And the people who are living here, a lot of us can't afford to live here. So who's going to supply the transportation for our new seniors that live there? Transportation's also struggling in our community, as you know. We're in desperate need of just bus drivers, and access to dial-a-ride is really, really challenging. So our seniors who are in poor health can't even get to their doctor's appointment, if they can get a doctor's appointment. A lot of our community members are going to get health care in Reno, Grass Valley, in other areas because the wait is too long here. So we don't have any geriatric specialty care here. We don't have a geriatric pharmacist. So we're bringing up people, if they don't already live here, to higher elevation, which for a lot of us causes health issues. So to keep all of that in mind as well, I do love that the washer and dryers will be in the unit. If this is approved, that's incredible and an expense really worth it, in my opinion, to keep our seniors safe. I love that there's elevators. So my biggest request is to meet the needs of our community members first, if at all possible, and then to wrap them with the services that are also failing the community at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. Okay, last call. Go ahead. Come on up.
My name's Lillian Jameson. I live close to the wetlands and enjoy it daily. I think it's the wrong development. 2 acres, they're just going to be so impacted and restricted to those of us who love it, let alone the waterfowl that use it. It's not an appropriate place to put a building, any building. And I have a definite understanding of housing needs, et cetera, but it's just the wrong place. Wrong place, traffic's bad, the preschool's there, the skateboard park, the traffic mitigation alone right there, that curve coming off of Brockway that you can't even see around going up or down, just too many things against it. Housing, great, we need it, but not there. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jameson. Going once, going twice. Okay, we will close public comment. Commissioners, we've been at it for about 90 minutes now. Should we take a quick break before we get into deliberation? Okay. I have 6:34, so we will take a 5-minute recess and reconvene at 6:39. call this meeting back to order, and we're going to move into commission deliberation right now. And with the commission deliberation, let's do a quick little straw poll. What are we thinking here? Commissioner Miller?
Do you want to start in that order?
Yeah.
I like our old order.
What's that?
I like the order we've been
Okay,
using.
great. Yeah, Vice Chair Tarnay, where are you at on this? Just real quickly.
I'm not good at quick, Dave. I got things.
The point of a straw poll is just like,
I would like to
are you
discuss a
leaning-
few things.
Well, we're going to discuss a lot of things. I imagine there's going to be a lot of discussion, a lot of talk about wetlands and, public comment that came up and all of these things. But just real quickly, which way are you leaning?
I think it's a great place for senior housing, honestly, because it's across from the senior center. When pre-COVID, they have senior lunches. There's
Good
a
enough.
huge community there.
Gotcha. Commissioner Riley.
Yeah, feeling really good. I got a couple issues, but good.
Commissioner Miller.
Similarly feeling great.
Okay, so I think that we know which direction this is leaning towards right now, so let's dig into the nitty-gritty. Susie, would you like to get started?
I would be so delighted. Okay, let's see. One of my concerns is a fire pit on the patio. I think there's a lot of restrictions during the summer. You would only be able to use it in the winter. Is that correct?
Unless it's gas.
Is it gas? Okay, all right. Great. That's a very small concern. I would love to hear more about the thoughtful policy for locals' preference and how that works. I also need to preface this. My father-in-law was on the waiting list for 2 years. He finally got in, and obviously he didn't have a job in the area because he is retired, but he did have family in the area, and so I see how it's hard to do a local's preference when, that complicates the issue. So I am not thrilled that the parking lot has gotten even closer now on the south edge. I have a crazy proposal, so let me know what you think. Again, my father-in-law's at the senior center across the street, and most people do not have cars. I don't think we need 46 parking spots. I think if we did one for each unit and then 10 guest parking spots, that gets us to 40. That allows us to eliminate those 6 parking spaces that are closest to the wetland. So that is my wacky proposal that I'm going to throw out there. I do agree with Cheryl. That is a highly used public transit stop, but I will also say that numerous times we have had to go rescue Grandpa because the bus has stopped running or it's too cold out and it doesn't come for another hour. We really need to improve our transit system, and I agree wholeheartedly there. I also want to say that I was Lana's substitute teacher previously, and she has grown up so much. Moving on, I also loved Barbara's suggestion of benches around there. I love street furniture. We should have benches, and we should be able to sit and look at that lovely wetland. I don't know how to put that in there. Then I think I'm not sure. I think his question has been answered, but previously, last time I asked, why are we impacting both setbacks instead of moving it forward, impacting the front setback and leaving more room for the wetland? I think it appears that that's because of the bioretention swales there now. I think that's the reason we can't move it further forward. Possibly. But again, I'm fine with I'm going to go through the things they gave for us were setbacks, parking, landscaping. I'm going through that list. So setbacks, I'd still like to move it further away from the wetland if we can. I don't know why we need a 20 or 30 foot from the curb and gutter. That's an awful long way of land that's not being used.
I thought it was 18 and 12.
It's 30 foot from the curb and gutter. It's 18 and 12 or 15 and 12 from the property line. There's easement there.
Got it.
Does that make sense? It's still a long way away from the road.
Yep.
Okay. Parking, I just threw out my crazy idea. Let's take it down to 40, get rid of those 6, have it away from that south wetland. Landscaping, we as a town do a terrible job of requiring people to do parking lot interior landscaping. The interesting thing is, like Yumi put on there the benefits of the current landscaping. And she was talking about how it provides screening and it provides buffering from the roads. But what we're not doing there when we don't provide that interior landscaping is breaking up that pavement space to help mitigate our urban heat islands. Yeah.
To interrupt with a question, where in this do you imagine the landscaping going that wouldn't block the view of someone backing out of a spot from someone coming around a corner? I hear what you're saying, but this seems like such a narrow strip of parking that doesn't personally give me grief. But if you have a proposal, I'd be happy to hear it.
Well, if we didn't eliminate the 6 across the bottom, you could eliminate, one pull-in spot at all of the diagonal pull-ins. That type of thing is where they used to put internal landscaping. Does that make sense? And so that would be the other suggestion. So I just think we as a town need to be better at actually implementing this policy. I do see that this is narrow. I also see that there's trees along the south side, so it is sort of shading that that area. That top row of parking on the south side of the building, but north of the wetland, is going to broil. It's just going to be really hot during the day, and that could use some of those interior landscaping. But it's not something that I'm concerned enough to not do this project. Does that make sense? But I think we need to follow up on this because it does help that urban heat island mitigation. I'm great with the private exterior space. Yes, they're patios, whatever they're not decks, they're, what are they, balconies. And so they meet the requirement, that's great. I'm fine with slightly smaller patios. I'm fine with the site coverage. It doesn't matter to me that it's 54% instead of 50. It seems a more efficient use. Let's do that. I am concerned about the wetland. I would like to move it slightly further away. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Tarnay. Commissioner Riley? That's all right. No, good. Susie, do you have something else?
I just think we should talk about the colors because whatever's on that picture is weird mustard and yellow.
Agreed.
Sure. Yeah, I think you had good talking points, Susie. Thank you. I too want to commend all of the public commenters, specifically Lana. Kudos to you. I think you've gone, but I love seeing our youth get involved and play an active role in our planning of our community and being sensitive to how we design and the impacts we create. And everything she said is accurate. I'd like to talk about the split rail fencing. I don't like the kind of amoeba design. I think it's haphazard. I'd rather there be a more intentional, whether that's delineating the parking, which I think makes a lot of sense on the east side, maybe extending along the north to the east side of the property. I don't have a problem delineating that entire part of the property to the east side. I think it would be nice to keep people out of it. When I did walk the site some months ago, it felt kind of not well cared for, and I could see that fence just delineating the parking along the south as well, south of the property, kind of along the wetlands to the south, and then maybe being a more orthogonal design heading northwest up to the northwest part of the property as well.
Is this map showing the outline of the fencing, or do we have that?
So there was when I was asking Carla, it looked like the line type, yes, with the X. I find that really disturbing from a design standpoint. It upsets me. So I like to see fencing be a little bit more linear if possible. So that's a design concept I'd like us to discuss. Not over signage the property. We have a sign thing here in town. We put a lot of signs everywhere telling people where they can and can't go. I don't want to oversign this. I think we could have some appropriate signage at kind of specific locations, east, west, north, south, talking about the wetlands and protecting it. So that's something, and I'm fine letting staff kind of take that on. Susie, I think you had reiterated one of the comments about benches. We could ask Laura, LJM Design Group, who did the landscaping, about placing some strategic benches. I think that's a great idea. I think given the public comment, which is very accurate on what a beautiful special area to the south that's been created with this restored wetland, I think we want to enhance and appreciate that. I would like to include a condition of approval. I don't think it was included, that if the wetland has been deemed to be damaged by construction, i.e. there's significant change to the wetland pre-construction and post-construction, I would like repair work to be done. And maybe maybe that's Adrian's job, or someone is hired to be there prior and then post. It sounds like there's going to be some meeting with the contractors prior to any construction taking place, so that's a positive. And I agree. I agree with the color discussion and the material suggestion per the staff. And yeah, that's all I have.
Great, Commissioner Miller.
Thank you. I agree with a lot of what's been said. I want to +1 to removing the 6 parking spaces at the bottom. I think that's very reasonable. I agree with Commissioner Riley's comment about making the fencing a little more linear. I think that would be a little less visually intrusive. Similarly, I'm also concerned about over-signing, but overall, it's a beautiful area, and I'm glad we're going to be able to share it with some more residents.
Great, thank you.
Can I just say one more thing? Of
course, yeah. Like I said before, I'm so happy that the changes were made and the concerns were addressed, and I really do think that the benefits of this project outweigh anything detrimental, and I want to believe that inhabiting this site with a much-needed population is going to enhance it. I don't think it's going to deteriorate the site any more than it already is, so I really think it's a net positive overall. Great, thanks. So I would agree with the reducing the parking. I'm okay with that as well, along that south side. My question to you, to everybody really, about this split rail fence. The way that it's set up now, it's obviously enclosing the wetlands, and it's making it so that the other areas that some of the neighbors have talked about enjoying seem accessible. So my concern with that would just be if we were to try and, make a linear fence go along the eastern portion of the project and then the southern portion of the road, that to me would feel like it's kind of, kind of closing it off from access. So, that's what I have to comment on that. And then, yeah, I am sympathetic to the applicant's material selection comments in regards to using a factory painted product. I would like to see at the staff level making sure that factory painted colors don't clash too much, aren't too yellow? Yeah, exactly. I just have seen some of the other affordable housing projects, modular affordable housing projects with some fiber cement board, and some of the color choices I think are just not very congruent with our environment. So,
Chair Gove, if I may,
yes.
Our new practice is actually to take the samples out on the site and look at them in the actual environment that they'll be in, because it's very different than looking at them in a building like this with the lighting that we have. And we've been much more successful doing that.
Fantastic.
Chair Gove, if I may, just so for staff's reference, are there specific examples in the community that we should look to as good examples?
Not yet. The one that was the most glaring that I've seen so far was in Placer County that I visited today, and it's the project over by, on the backside of the Schaefer's Mill Golf Course. There's just some very vibrant colors and white vinyl windows, and it's just like, man, just a little bit more thought into some of these choices can really make a big difference for what's going to be there for a long, long time.
Glad to hear it wasn't Truckee.
Yeah, so if we have any specific suggestions in language to give to staff, I think now would be the time.
For your convenience, I put up a couple notes just so we can clarify or get consensus. There was a minor change that Vice Chair Tarnay provided us on condition approval number 4 regarding the date. The fire pit, we can clarify in the conditions that it has to be a gas fireplace. It seems like there was consensus to change it to 40 parking spaces, removing the parallel parking spaces, and then potentially having a little more landscaping there, or at least getting the landscaping away from the wetland. There was some discussion about the front setback. I didn't hear a consensus about whether or not you wanted to move all of the buildings up or north. Can I make a comment about that? That would be up to.
Yes,
Chair.
go ahead.
Sorry, I just had to, so in my coordination with engineering on stormwater treatment, we're very limited to what we can do on site and stay away from the wetlands. The town asked for additional 10 feet of right-of-way, that the stormwater treatment needs to be 10 feet away from the building. So that gives us just as enough room as we need for stormwater treatment. You push that building any forward and we don't have enough.
Thank you, that's what I suspected.
Excellent input, thank you.
Okay, so I guess that's been decided. I've also added that there seems to be consensus that benches around the wetlands or a couple benches near the wetlands overlooking the wetlands would be desired, and we can work with the landscape architect for those placements if that's okay with the Planning Commission. There was a discussion about the tree type on the southern boundary. Is there concern? We can continue to work with the landscape architect to make sure that they're appropriate species chosen, if that's appropriate.
That would be great, and that would be in your guys' purview?
Yes. The material color, as our community development director noted, we can do a whole sample of all of the, how all of the materials go together on site. If your one concern is that one color, we can also just do that one color. A little direction on that would also be helpful here. Is your concern all of the colors together or just that one color, the same color that I identified in my staff report?
In the picture, it just looks like mustard, baby duck yellow, and beige. I don't know if that's our desired color scheme.
Okay, so it sounds like maybe all of the colors should be looked at on site.
Including the windows and door frames.
Okay, and then choosing warmer, darker earth tone colors that are not as
complementary to the environment.
Okay. It looks like Commissioner Riley.
Yeah, I was just going to say, and maybe some differentiation that they're all not the same kind of shade and tone, but there's, some kind of contrast.
Okay.
Maybe a little darker than what we were seeing, but natural or, yeah.
But that's so different that one pops and sticks out.
Right, not like the red and blue, or maybe not go like Coburn Crossing, I would say, maybe not, don't use that palette.
Okay.
For the hotel.
Do you remember the color at Frischman, though? Because it was brown, beige, and there was a red, but it was a brick red. Do you
Yes.
Yeah.
It was almost like this.
Yeah, and those were lovely, I thought.
What's there now? I feel like the red there is pretty bright or bold, but we need to get into that here.
Okay, so we will ask them to do a material sample on site for all of the building materials.
And we're trusting you, Yumi. It's all up to you.
It's a team effort here.
No pressure.
And it sounds like their material palette currently calls out the same for both buildings, and that seems to be okay moving forward. Okay.
You could tap the Objective Design Review Committee that you have going, get their opinion. I feel like they've been weighing in on this.
Okay, the split rail fencing locations, there wasn't quite a consensus on whether or not it should be
Let's
more linear.
dive back into that.
Yeah, so I support what you're saying. It doesn't need to, I kind of can see pros and cons of keeping people out. If we were to extend the split rail fencing at the northeastmost point of the parking lot, where the dimension line is, and maybe extend it to the east to the extent of the wetland, and then come down straight. Are you guys understanding what I'm saying?
Yeah, so you just erect a linear design based on basically the
Go like down and then across. But this would be left open.
Filling in the gaps between the development and the wetland, but leaving the gaps between the wetland and the rest of the neighborhood open.
Yeah, okay, I'm fine with that.
Sorry, I was looking down. Can you do your demonstration again?
Across and down and back.
So you're not blocking off access down to the wetland from the rest of the neighborhood, but you're down to the bottom south part, but you're blocking off the lobe. Does that make sense
Okay, so for the larger wetland to the south off property is what you would want to maintain access to. Okay, all right, I got it.
I could draw a little sketch.
Okay, so we have, and would the landscape, the bench seating be okay on that side of the property, or would you prefer, okay.
What is that side?
Scatter them about.
Okay, just to have access, visual access, I see, okay. I'm just trying to understand so I could write these conditions of approval.
Find the best view of the mountains and position the bench to observe it.
Okay, and then the split rail fencing signage, there's also already a requirement for signage. We can work with them to determine what that looks like and how much. We're doing the materials inspection on site. There was a discussion from Commissioner Riley about the wetlands repair work and having Adrian potentially go out. Did you want him to do a post-construction inspection to determine if it was damaged?
Yes.
Okay, if it was damaged, it would likely require a project amendment where we'd come back to you.
Great. I just want, I want to have faith that everyone is operating on the same standard of protection and security, and we know things don't always go as planned. And if repair work does need to be made, we want to make sure it happens, that it doesn't get neglected.
And why would that need to come back to us? I mean, we can't just state now that if the wetland is damaged during construction, that the applicant has to mitigate that damage before.
So there's another minor use permit for actual disturbance of the wetland, which we then have to look at, and then there's mitigation measures for what you do when you disturb a wetland. It may not just be repair, it may be repair and create more.
Got it.
And then I noted in my presentation, I didn't call them out individually, but I did want to note there were 3 minor amendments to conditions. They weren't really substantive. One was to reference the plan development changes in the landscape plan condition, update condition number 44 with the correct reference. Actually, update number 57 with the correct reference, and then condition of approval 69. I changed the language to require non-disturbance area on all the wetlands rather than just the eastern side of the wetlands.
Wait, so on condition of approval, you did 44, you did update it from the 46 parking spaces to 40.
No,
correct?
This is just a error in my reference to a different condition. So we'll have to add a new condition for your parking.
Because condition of approval 44 does list the 46 parking spaces as well.
Maybe I'm referencing the wrong one. It's mostly I'm updating the signage for the wetlands requirement with just to reference the appropriate.
We would modify any of the conditions that reference the number of parking spaces, so that way it would reflect the commission's new condition.
Yeah, we'll make sure that the 40 is in the plan development section and in the conditions of approval. And with that, we can make those changes in the resolution, and then our chair will review that for signature. And if you are ready, somebody could make a motion.
That's what I was going to say.
I would love to read a motion if there were language we could.
Or Yumi could also say it and you could agree.
Okay, let's see. So here is it's a motion to adopt Resolution 2021-10 approving adopting a mitigated negative declaration, approving the project amendment to the development permit, approving the minor use permit, plan development, and the tentative map with amendments as proposed, which we discussed here, which is to amend condition number 4, update the fire pit requirements, reduce the parking to 40 spaces, add some benches around the wetland, work with the landscape architect on the tree species, update, ensure a material color sample inspection on site prior to installation, a split rail fence location should be more linear, and then require a wetland, require the biologist to do a post-construction inspection to ensure that the wetland has been maintained.
I would like to make that motion.
Second. Kaylee, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Chair Gove?
Yes.
Vice Chair Tarnay?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
Commissioner Riley?
Yes.
And I'd like to note that should anyone wish to appeal this decision, the deadline for that is Friday, May 27th at 5:00 p.m.
Okay, the motion passes. Good luck with your project. Thanks, everybody. All right, we'll go ahead and move on to agenda item 7.2 for application 2021-112, the Rock Golf Net. And for the staff presentation, we have Chantal. Okay.
I need to get out of here.
I think that they've done like a larger piece of exploration.
It'll take me just a moment to pull up my pop.
It's lonely out here.
It's so quiet now. Is everybody ready?
Fire away.
So, good evening, Commissioners. Tonight, for your review, we have the Rock Golf Net Variance. This is application 2021-112 and item 7.2. So tonight, the Planning Commission's role is to make a decision on a variance to modify height standards to allow a golf net with a maximum height over the 6 feet allowed in our development code. The review authority for variances is the zoning administrator. However, our development code does allow the zoning administrator to refer a variance application to the Planning Commission for review and for decision. The zoning administrator made this decision based on the lack of historic town permits for golf netting, the height that is proposed by the applicant versus the height proposed by the golf consultant versus the height staff is currently comfortable supporting. The considerable departure from our development code standards for height of fences and the potential for setting precedents for golf netting around all our existing golf courses. The Commission may approve a variance with or without conditions if all the findings can be made. So you have a couple of major discussion topics this evening. One is that does the variance, if authorized, constitute a grant of special privilege inconsistent with the limitations upon other properties in the vicinity and under the identical zoning district? And is this variance requested the minimum departure from the requirements of the development code necessary to grant relief to the applicant? The golf net is proposed along the northern portion of the shared property line between the Rock Commercial Center and the Ponderosa Golf Course. The Rock is located in our general commercial or CG zone district, and the Ponderosa Golf Course is in our recreation zone district. And the applicant is proposing to locate the golf netting along the Rock's common area parcel, the Building F parcel, and the Ponderosa Golf Course parcel.
So here's a little project area overview because we will be discussing similar zoned or identical zone properties in the vicinity. You can see the rock is here. The pink is the general commercial zone district. There is some over here where the Cedar Sport Hotel is. The Ponderosa Meadows townhomes are also within that zone district. And so here's just an overview of those zone districts in the vicinity. So the Ponderosa Golf Course, it was permitted by Nevada County in 1962 and has been in operation since 1966. It is a 9-hole golf course. The land is owned by the Airport District and the golf course is operated by TDRPD. And the Rock is a commercial center with housing that was approved in 2002 with a variety of project amendments throughout the years. The most recent amendment was 2018 for the construction of Building F. This is the building on the northern property line where the golf netting is being proposed. The Rock development includes 6 commercial buildings and 19 residences, the Ponderosa Meadows townhomes. So the applicant is proposing 320 lineal feet of 50-foot high golf netting. There will be 9 50-foot poles. And as I mentioned before, it spans 3 parcels. And just to kind of give you an idea, let's see, here's my little mouse there, yep. So this is the Building F parcel. It juts into the golf course and then back into the common area, ending right kind of at that line where the townhome parcel begins, or the townhome common area parcel begins. So the land use entitlement requested this evening, it's a variance to adjust the development code. Our development code section on fences, walls, and hedges provides standards for maximum height of fencing, which is 6 feet. A 50-foot golf net fence is not approvable under our current development code standards. However, the chapter does allow for some increases in height for fencing for what we call sport court fencing, for tennis courts or other recreational courts. That fencing can go up to 20 feet in height. However, the applicant did not feel that 20 feet would be would be adequate to prevent the golf balls from entering the rock, and as such we discussed with the applicant a permitting pathway that would include the potential for a variance to get higher than 20 feet. So staff informed the applicant team that a variance could be approved if information in the project application supported the variance findings. As part of the project application, the applicant did provide a golf net study done by a golf consultant. The study models 2 potential golf drives that result in a fencing height in excess of 141 feet. And you can see, so this is from the golf study, and it's probably pretty small on your screen, but this top of the fence is about almost 142 feet, and it slowly winds down where the bottom here is 50 feet. So, much over 100 feet for a majority of the elevations. Staff emailed the agent to ask for additional information that quantitatively compared their proposal at 50 feet to the consultant proposal at 141 feet. A letter from the consultant was received the day of the March Planning Commission hearing, and that has been included as part of the kind of supplemental staff report memo. The consultant did not provide a quantitative analysis, but did say that 50 feet would not be effective. So as always, staff evaluates a project's consistency with both our general plan and our development code. One of the findings for the variance approval is that the variance is consistent with our general plan. The project area is located in the commercial and open space recreation land designations of our general plan. The open space recreation land use designation is applied to areas with developed recreational uses that are also compatible with natural resources. Our general plan says this designation is intended to minimize sprawl, to protect significant vistas, wildlife movement corridors, biological resource areas, and to accommodate the recreational uses. In our general plan, the project is also located in the Brockway Road neighborhood area, or the Brockway Road corridor. We have a goal, Community Character 14, that directs us to enhance the character and qualities of the Brockway Road corridor, and also a policy that directs us to preserve and improve the character of the road corridor, including preservation of its open qualities. So in order for staff to evaluate the potential impacts or consistency with the project with the with our general plan, staff requested visual simulations. In the first iteration, those were not provided until the day of the hearing, or the March hearing, but we have now received 3 visual simulations and staff requested a 4th view. And prior to this, lacking the visual simulation, staff did not find that they had adequate information to make this finding, but we feel a little bit differently now. So we'll go through these visual simulations. So we've got 4 locations, kind of the direct look upon the golf net fencing and what that would look like from points on the public way. So this first one is looking at the western end of the Sotheby's Building F. This is where it would start on this portion of the property. And this is of the 50-foot proposed golf net, not of the consultant proposed or the staff's one, just to clarify. We have a direct view from the sidewalk looking straight at the golf net and beyond Building F, or Sotheby's building. I don't know at what point we stopped calling it Building F. This is from the roundabout, the crosswalk at the roundabout. So this is where the golf net would presumably be ending. You can see the Ponderosa Meadows townhomes here. So the golf net goes probably ends right behind this tree line. And then staff requested just a view from the other side of Brockway to kind of get that full kind of pulled back view to see if we are in fact impeding on a significant vista or an open corridor quality. Staff also did a site visit. I drove up and down Brockway just to kind of get a feeling of what may or may not be shielded with the golf net fencing. And between site visits and the visual simulations, staff does find that the golf net is consistent with the general plan. With the tree line in the buildings, it really isn't, you really can't see it very, very much from the different viewpoints on the public way. So we're here tonight because 50 feet of golf net fencing is not consistent with our development code. However, if the variance is approved, this will adjust the development code standards and then bring it into consistency. All of the findings must be made to allow the project to be consistent with our development code. So here are the required variance findings. All of the findings are analyzed in the draft resolution, but tonight we'll just highlight the 3 that I think require some additional discussion. Those are whether the variance, whether there are special circumstances applicable to the property so that strict application of our development code deprives the property owner of privileges enjoyed by other property owners in the vicinity and under identical zone districts. If the variance is authorized, that it does not constitute a grant of special privilege inconsistent with the limitations upon other properties in the vicinity and in the same zone district. And if the variance is the minimum departure from the requirements of the development code necessary to grant relief to the applicant. So we'll start with finding 1. Are there special circumstances that deprives the property owner privileges enjoyed by others in the vicinity and under the same zone district? Staff contends that commercial properties along Brockway that are not adjacent to the golf course do not experience the same potential for property damage from stray golf balls, and as such would not require increased fencing heights to provide protection. Staff acknowledges that not supporting additional height for golf netting could deprive the applicant from the privileges enjoyed by other property owners in identical zone districts in the vicinity. However, because of the townhomes, the property owners of the townhomes are also adjacent to the golf course and in the commercial zone district, and so similar to the applicant's property, they also risk property damage from stray golf balls and are not protected by golf netting. So staff is saying that in order to make this finding, staff is recommending that we include these properties. Ponderosa Meadows residents have not requested golf netting, but if they were to in the future, staff believes we would want to allow them to install whatever is authorized this evening. Finding number 2 is very similar to finding number 1. Staff believes that the granting of the variance is not a special privilege as long as the privilege is extended to the neighboring townhomes if requested. So variance finding number 5, staff struggled in making this finding. During the course of project review, staff requested additional data on the frequency of stray balls entering the property, the extent of the property or personal damage caused by errant balls, and a comparison of the protective ability between the consultant-supported 141-foot golf net height and the applicant requested height of 50 feet. The applicant has not been able to provide this information. However, at the March Planning Commission meeting, the applicant did provide a letter from the consultant, and the consultant stated that a 50-foot high net would result in golf balls easily entering the rock. So staff is still kind of left with some unanswered questions. Why propose a height that isn't supported by the consultant? What is the actual magnitude of the errant golf ball issue? And, is there, do we have any information, any property claims, anything over the last 15 years of the rock being a commercial center? And, staff does acknowledge that there's a potential for errant golf balls to enter the property, but really just I don't feel that we have the information to determine the extent of the issue and whether or not what's being proposed is going to resolve the issue, or if it is the minimum height necessary to resolve the issue. So in the absence of data, staff is only really comfortable in supporting a 35-foot height limit increase, which is, still large, over 6 feet, but is the maximum height allowed in the rec zone district. Staff is also proposing some unique conditions of approval for commission review. Golf netting can entangle wildlife such as birds and bats, and as you might recall, the open space recreation land use designation speaks to wildlife corridors and compatibility with natural resources. It doesn't seem that the netting is what actually harms the animals, but it's the being entrapped in the netting and not being removed in a timely fashion. So this condition is striving to prevent delay from releasing entangled animals and just providing contact information or providing some sort of responsible party that can be contacted if we do see animals that are stuck in this golf net. Condition of approval number 13. This is really highlighting the life expectancy of golf netting. We just want to make sure that someone is designated as a responsible party. If it's the airport district, is it going to be the owners of the rock? Is it going to be the operators of the golf course? And just acknowledging that we expect any golf netting that is installed to be maintained. Let's see, over the last 24 hours, staff has received multiple comments from employees of MWA. MWA is located at the Rock, and these employees both park and work at the location and are relaying experiences that they have experienced with golf balls and damage that they have seen. So staff's recommendation tonight is adopting Resolution 2022-06, determining the project exempt from CEQA per Section 15303 of the CEQA guidelines, and approving a variance for a 35-foot high golf net based on the recommended findings and subject to the recommended conditions of approval. As always, the Planning Commission can take alternative action. That could be continuing the public hearing to date and time certain. The Planning Commission may request additional information from the applicant and/or staff. Find that the exemption is not suitable and require the preparation of an initial study. Approve the variance subject to adding, modifying, eliminating, or any provision or condition of approval, or deny the variance on the basis that one or more of the required findings cannot be made. And I have my appeal ending May 28th. I noticed Yumi said May 27th, so that may need to be changed. It's the Friday that is close to May 27th or 28th at 5 p.m. And I'm available for questions.
Thanks, Chantel.
Of course.
Does the applicant have a presentation?
Chair, Commissioners, good to see you in person. Don't have a formal presentation, but I just want to address a few of the things that Chantel has mentioned. It's been about 15 years since we first developed the Rock. We've got 15 years of experience of being there now. And a lot of it's personal experience for me because I'm, up until COVID, I was there every day. The townhomes are really not at risk. If you look at the golf course, they're at about 50 yards past the end of a par 3. They're not where people are pulling out their driver and smacking. So I don't believe that, I understand that you guys want to put that in their paperwork for precedent in the future, but I think that's low risk. And as in regards to the Cedar House, if you look at where the golf course is there's no holes in thread. It's just we have a unique condition that the 9th tee box, where it's located, their cart path actually comes onto our property. They put it that close to the property line. And we've never asked them to move it. But, you know, a golf course doesn't attract the best golfers. I'm just going to say it. You know, it is a PGA rated course, 9-hole. Anyone can play it, and anyone does play it. And our golf consultant actually said that's a bit of a problem in their modeling. They don't have the skill level to model that level of a golfer. So one of the things I want to clarify, I think there was the language used is the golf consultant said that it would be, I forgot the exact terms used, but I suggest you read the Tanner Consulting letter because I think he does address it. It's not that he's saying it wouldn't be effective at any height. There's a reduced effectiveness based on as you bring the height down. It loses its ability to catch every stray ball. You're not going to catch everyone. This is a liability problem. So I'll give you guys the history. A ball almost hit somebody. It happened to be the insurance company representative that insures the rock. And guess what their adjacent neighbor is? An attorney that specializes in recreational law, John Fagan. So we get a letter, the management at the Rock gets a letter from this person from LP Insurance. We ask John Fagan, because he's an attorney in that specialty law, and he points out there's been a recent court case where a baby in a stroller got killed on a path next to a sidewalk that they built next to a golf course. And historically, it was between the golfer and the person that was hit. The golfer's liable. Well, they argued the case and made it through the courts that it was a known risk to build that path there, next to a golf course, knowing stray balls come. So now that we know that we have a hazard, he told us that we are duty bound to make a reasonable effort to mitigate the risk. So we contact the golf consultant. He tells us, does his study independently, and he says, put the net starting at the tee box at 50, and he studies it coming from 2 fairways, the 9th hole plus the other one coming back the other way that he describes, and he makes a recommendation up to 140 some odd feet. We came into staff with that report, and they said, well, you're allowed 50 feet on your property. You got 50-foot tall buildings. We would not support anything over 50 feet. Bingo. That's how we stopped at 50 feet and didn't propose, because staff told us they wouldn't support anything over 50. So then we put in our application for 50, and staff comes back and says 35. Based on what? I'm not sure. But we got a health, life, safety issue here. Our building gets hit probably once a week. We've been lucky enough not to have any broken windows. The building A, LP Insurance, they had their window broken. We've had multiple windshields. We've only had 2 people figure out that they can actually put in a claim to the property management and have the property owner. But that doesn't mean that all the windshields and broken windows couldn't have. The claim history is, I'm only aware of 2. But I know there's been a lot more, because more than that of my own staff have had broken windows. And it's not just property damage. When you hear about a baby being killed by a golf ball, it tells you how real it is. So that's what we're dealing with here. I wish we didn't have to deal with this. I was hoping that there's a long line of mature trees there. We were hoping those trees were going to do a better job. Bottom line, it hasn't done it. And I see golf balls, they're mostly hooks coming off the 9th tee box, going up and climbing and swerving. They go right past my building. They land out on Brockway Road. They hit the condos and houses across the street. So we want as tall as possible. We think it's crazy to go less than the 50 being the lowest number that the expert said. But we were told by staff 50 max. We stopped at 50 max. So we asked that you go for the 50. And as the golf consultant suggested, that we put the foundations in for the taller net, that in the future, when there's a problem, to go back and dig up the foundations and put in bigger foundations, that will be crazy expensive. So that we should put the bigger foundations in for up to what he's proposed in the future someday. There would be really no stress right now, only expense for the property owners. We don't have any problem with the conditions of approval. We don't want any wildlife in the nets, and we want them to be maintained. And we do have a property manager on the property, is Camco. They'll be the ones in charge. We have no problem with the signage, and we want, quick notification, quick action plan to get things dealt with. So, and I'm around for any questions.
Thanks, Kurt. Okay, so let's move into clarifying questions for staff. Vice Chair Tarnay.
Thank you. I feel I'm first in line all day. Okay, Chantal, so how does this not open the door for all nearby residences to request similar netting? Are we going to end up with every golf course in Truckee surrounded by 50-foot nets with a CEQA exemption?
I mean, they would all have to come in for a variance because they're anything over 20 feet. I mean, 20 feet's a minor use permit, so they would need to still request that. Would it be the Sotheby's or Building F? It is 20, I looked it up, it's 25 feet 6 inches, I believe.
Okay, so it's not even the 35 feet there. Okay, so what do we know about bird populations moving through this area or other wildlife movement corridors through this area? And is there an expected amount of animal entrapment that comes with this type of fence?
I can't speak to, I don't actually know any migration routes that go through this area. Staff felt that the
installed.
They could get to the 20 feet if they request a minor use permit. We can make, and we discussed this with the Rock, the director can make a similar use finding. So yes, it's not a tennis court, it's not a basketball court, but it's a recreational court that's trying to prevent balls from leaving. So you can get to 20 feet with minor use permit approval.
And minor use permit, is that at the staff level or is that also commission level?
That's zoning administrator.
Danielle's
It's
pointing at
me
her.
wearing my other hat.
Excellent, thank you. I think that is all my questions for staff. Thank you.
Commissioner Riley.
No questions for staff, just the applicant.
Commissioner Miller.
I have a few. Why is this not the golf course's responsibility? It's their people hitting objects.
They didn't apply for it. Yeah, I believe the airport district is an applicant because it's going on their property. But the applicant, the requesting party is the Rock. So I don't have that answer.
Okay.
But
the applicant mentioned a couple claims were made. It looked from reading the staff report that there wasn't a number of incidents.
I was not given any information about any claims until this evening.
Yeah, no worries. Could you pull up, please, the language for finding one?
Sure.
I have a pedantic question, the best kind.
This is probably not the best way to do it.
That works.
There we go.
So,
whoa. It's got a mind of its own. Hold on one second. And ta-da.
Brilliant. Of the kinds of special circumstances, my read of this is that they're all things that cannot be changed about the land, whereas use can be changed.
Property manager, we mentioned to them, and they said that they would put together a protocol, but they didn't tell us how many minutes or how many hours.
Okay. That's not like I would
But
be
a
able to
willingness.
evaluate. Yeah, for sure. What else? How did this come up when the Rock was originally being permitted? Like, surely someone was aware there was a golf course nearby.
Sure. Great question. This legal case that I mentioned where the baby was killed, prior to that, it was between the golfer and the person being struck.
Okay.
That was the legal standard. The legal standard has now moved significantly.
Makes sense. And my last question for you, did your lawyer advise on what constitutes a reasonable effort? Is your coming here today enough to, and let's say we said no, would that protect you in that liability situation?
Me not being a legal expert, I'm not comfortable with that.
No further questions. Thank you.
Chair Gove, I'm sorry, I forgot one for staff.
Oh, sure, jump back in.
Thank you so much. Hey, Chantal, you don't happen to have the wording for that CEQA exemption nearby, do you?
I could find it in just a moment.
Okay, we'll move on. Thank you so much.
Great. So why don't we continue with clarifying questions for the applicant while Chantal looks at that? And Susie, you just want to carry on?
I don't think I have any questions unless you can fill us in on the bird population and migration.
It's interesting to bring up because I immediately went to thinking about memories of birds in the area. And when I first moved in there, we had a huge amount of blackbirds that showed up. And I think it was because of the brewery. But once they did most of their brewing at another location, the blackbirds have gone away. So I can't even remember seeing much of any birds there. Never seen a deer. And we do have occasional bear that comes to the dumpsters, but we haven't seen the bear in a long time. But the nets closest to the dumpster area, that's the ones where we're lifting them off to give free access. And due to the fact the golf course is below us by several feet, we feel that we're okay lifting the net off the bottom and it doesn't create a hazard so that ground wildlife can make it under. We've even sized it at, I believe, 80 inches for one section, so a person can walk underneath it near a back staircase and go on and off the golf course into the rock.
Okay. And one more question. What's your feeling on the applicant having the previous commission remove the staff recommendation for golf ball resistant materials in the building?
The building is built with, it wasn't needed because that's what was proposed. We had golf ball resistant. It's all metal sided, tempered glass windows, metal roof. It's built bomber. So that's never been the issue.
Okay, so you had them remove the condition of approval and did it anyway?
The condition of approval was not needed as a condition because the proposal was already for golf ball resistant construction. So point that out to the planning commissioners and they agreed with the logic and removed it. I didn't remove it. The planning commission removed it.
And that's not what we're reviewing tonight.
And that's not the issue.
as to why it was asked to be removed, and it sounds like it was a different issue.
Yep.
And it's actually in our report, so it is part of the question tonight.
I was on the planning commission for two of the hearings, the original or the 2004 Rock, maybe the second building, and then also the 2018 Sotheby's application. And I remember that we didn't talk about netting or anything. I remember talking about materials and such. And I'm understanding now that you're saying, well, you didn't have an issue, there was no legality in front of you, so that's why it's before us today. Have you considered other measures? It seems like this isn't isolated to our community, and couldn't signage be installed at the Rock to notify patrons you're entering into a unsafe area? There's the potential for flying golf balls as this development is located adjacent to,
Those signs are already installed.
They exist.
And cameras will be going up too to try and catch golfers who hit balls.
Okay.
And
that's not a.
We don't have to ask you guys for that. We're doing it.
No, but I'm saying, are you aware that that's sufficient? It seems like signage in other situations from a legal standpoint is sufficient to warn the patrons you're coming into an unsafe environment, buyer beware, visitor beware.
We've been advised that we do need to do more than that. And that's why we're here.
Okay. Hard hats? Seriously.
Well, there's a lot of potentials.
Yeah.
We've explored, putting a net over the cars or putting shade structures to protect, and it's kind of like once you've been around a golf course, you realize the balls ricochet off of anything and everything, and the best thing to do is catch it as close to the person striking as possible.
I don't have any more questions.
Okay, so Chantal, did you find that language?
Yeah, it's up there. Would you like me to read it, Commissioner Tarnay? So I'll tell you where I went with it is that if you see it says examples of this exemption include but are not limited to E, accessory appurtenant structures including garage, carports, patios, swimming pools, and fences.
I was a little bit more interested in
Do you want me to zoom? Can you see it okay?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm just trying to find it on my notes here. Give me 1 second. Okay, class 3 consists of construction. Okay, yeah, so it's that first paragraph there. Class 3 consists of construction and location of limited numbers of new, small facilities or structures, installation of small, new equipment and facilities in small structures, and the conversion of existing small structures from one use to another, where only minor modifications are made to the exterior of the structure. That was kind of to me, it's the top paragraph and the defining factor of that, and I just wanted that to, thank you, be brought up.
Of course.
May I address something that was previously brought up and not responded to?
Sure.
There are many golf nets already protecting homes all around the Ponderosa golf course. If you guys haven't walked it and didn't know that, I just thought I'd share that.
Thank you. Okay.
None of which have been permitted, though. Well, none of which the town knows that they, has been permitted since the town's incorporated, I guess.
When this application came in, we did a kind of record search to look at if there are other existing golf net facilities in the town of Truckee, were they permitted, and we weren't able to find any. So they're either unpermitted or they were potentially permitted through Nevada County prior to the town's incorporation.
Great. Any other questions before we move on to public comment? So now we will open public comment. Seeing none, we will close public comment. And we'll move into commissioner deliberations. Who wants to start?
Doing a straw poll again?
Yeah, let's do it. Where are you at?
I'm having trouble making a few of these findings.
Okay.
I do not find it in compliance with the SEQA exemption.
Okay.
Yeah, I have difficulty with 1, 2, 3, 5C, and 6 for the variance.
My issues were with 1, 2, and 5.
Vice Chair Tarnay, do you have anything to add?
I don't think so.
Okay. Commissioner Riley?
I empathize. I get where Kurt's coming from. I don't think he's here because he wants to be here. I understand the whole legality piece, or I'm sensitive to that. I don't believe we can make, or I cannot make the findings in support of this variance in terms of believing that the benefits of approval of this request would outweigh the negative impacts. I believe the negative impacts will far greatly outweigh the positives. I have fear this sets a precedent. I have fear that all the other golf course communities will be lining up, Gray's Crossing, Old Greenwood, et cetera, Tahoe Donner. And it'll just be this, well, we let them do it and we can make this, why is this a special privilege? We have the same issues. I got my $10 million home I want to protect. We got PJ's restaurant, and on and on. And I just see it being a rabbit hole. And again, I can't make these findings.
To elaborate in a similar vein, as I alluded to in my questions, my read of the special circumstances required for the first finding are that they are immutable, and this is a golf course that can, with some expense and some effort, obviously, but mitigate this on its own through its own design. This isn't cutting out a mountain. This is redesigning a golf course, and it's closed for half the year anyway. So I have trouble with the first finding. The second one, this would be a special privilege unless the scenario that Commissioner Riley described happened, which is also not great. And for the fifth one, it is not the minimum because it is not enough. From what I'm reading, there's no way to avoid having the worst of all worlds here, and 2 or 3 incompatible uses don't make it right.
Anyone care to make a motion?
Again, I would love to read one. Thank you all for writing these out for us also. It makes it a lot easier.
So I'm sensing that this isn't the motion that you're not making a variance.
No.
You're not granting a variance, so let's go to the alternative actions.
Thank you.
And it would help if you, again, reiterate which of the required findings your commission, maybe unanimously or at least with a majority vote, were unable to make.
Commissioner Riley, you mentioned ones that I didn't. Do you want to describe those?
Yeah, so, I think you had said 1, 2, and 5? Is that right? So I also commented or noted 3, which was impacts to CEQA, viewshed, wildlife, aesthetics. And number 6, if the consultant feels that 140 feet is sufficient, or the kind of, it should be there, and staff's saying 35 and the applicant wants 50, I don't really think we're hitting the mark, with what's being proposed, and I'm certainly not comfortable with 140 feet, much less, 15 feet. So that was 6.
In that case, I would like to make a motion that we deny the variance on the basis that one or more of the required findings cannot be made, and those are numbers 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Chair Gove?
Yes.
Vice Chair Tarnay?
I'm sorry, the motion is that we're denying? Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
Commissioner Riley?
Yes.
There's
Okay.
a 6.
Was there a 6?
Yeah.
You tricked me.
No, there is no 6.
Then 5. Please strike 6, and I'll mention it
Oh,
from the
sorry.
record.
That's what, maybe it was my own number. What was it part of the 5?
You were describing something that sounded like 5.
Yeah, maybe I don't have it up on my screen. I just was looking at my own notes that I numbered.
It was 5 because you were talking about the minimum necessary and that you felt that you didn't hit the mark with 50 feet or 35. Or.
Okay, so the motion to deny the variance passes.
1, 2, 5, and 3. Okay.
Okay, I get it.
Thank you, Mr. Rankins.
Poor numbering.
Okay.
I want to clarify the appeal date since I had it wrong in case the applicant or anyone would like to appeal. It is May 27th at 5 p.m.
Okay, thank you, Chantel.
You're welcome.
All right, let's move into staff reports. Do we have any staff reports?
Yes, we have an agenda for you next month. We have one project for certain, that is the Rocker Memorial Skate Park. That'll have a CEQA document associated with it, so you'll be getting a fairly robust packet in advance of that. Excuse me, we have potentially an appeal of an SB 9 application, not sure quite yet. And then we may have a presentation of the annual report, but it just is pending kind of a bunch of moving pieces for next month. But we'll definitely have a hearing because we do have one item for certain.
And just a note for the general plan update, we're on track still to release everything June 3rd. So I'll be doing a presentation in front of council at their next meeting to go over the master schedule, which is, you guys have already seen that, but I'll make sure that you're included in that. But it's beefy. There's a lot of information. And we're going to do our best to make comparisons between the 2025 general plan and the 2040 general plan so that people can understand what the differences are. So that will be our focus. But June 3rd, keep that in mind.
Thank you. Okay, commission member reports. Susie, what you been up to?
What have I been up to? I've been attending my leadership program, which has been delightful. We graduate Thursday in 2 days, so we were all done. And then I have another item that I would like to discuss after this. Thank you.
Discuss what, when?
I have an item that I would like to bring to the commission. And would you like me to do it now or after? Yes.
After what?
After everyone else does their reports.
No, go ahead.
Okay. All right. Well, delightfully, I have started a new job, and oddly enough, it was related to one of the public comments, but I am training to be a school bus driver. So, which is a vast departure, but we need them desperately. So, unfortunately, this means that I now work until 5 p.m. Previously in the past, we've been able to discuss the timing of our planning commission meetings. I asked the staff to put this on our agenda, and I was told no. They would like our meetings to be at 5 o'clock, and we do not get to discuss it. So we cannot discuss and make any decisions now because it's not on the agenda. But I believe not only is it in my favor, if we could do this 15 or 30 minutes later, it's in the favor of the public who comes to make public comment, to do it at 5:15 or to do it at 5:30. So again, I don't think we can vote on this right now because it's not on the agenda, but I would like to throw that out there as I'm going to be running in, barely making it to these meetings, and I want you to know that it's not because I'm not organized, it's because I'm gainfully employed. I'm driving around people's precious cargo of their children. So, yeah, thank you.
Yep, I'm
Okay,
open.
good report.
Can we offer support for talking about this, like at the next, or, I mean, do we need a next, can we do it via email, or do we need a meeting, or?
So the challenge is that the council actually set the time currently. It happened during COVID because they wanted consistency, and so until council changes that resolution that they adopted, we can't agendize it for you.
So we could all bring it up one-on-one with our council people.
You can. The other part of this is that we've heavily linked the commission and the council together for all of the general plan scheduling. So it creates different challenges when we've asked everyone to be here at the same time, and then we're going to have council talk about potentially changing.
And I fully understand that joint meetings are different than our planning commission meetings on their own.
Susie, can you just drive the bus a little faster?
Absolutely not. I get paid to be patient, and that is my favorite saying now.
Okay. Commissioner Riley, anything to report?
No.
Commissioner Miller?
I'm so excited we have an additional bus driver in our community, and I know that staff has put so much time into getting ready for this behemoth general plan and has already made a lot of personal sacrifices, I'm certain, and this seems like a very reasonable adjustment. 15 minutes isn't a lot. It's not going to break us. And I remember when, I think it was my first meeting, and I was in person when we went to having 5 p.m. meetings. It had been 6 before, and that one was 4, and we all discussed it. I mean, Chair Gove, I remember you specifically, I was like, oh, I can do 4, whatever. And you were like, no, that's early, people work. And I think that is a very fair point. We want to make this a place where everyone can come and participate, and most typical, maybe not most, but it is very typical to end work right at 5. So if we want the public comment and the commission to be open, then we should follow suit. So thank you for all the sacrifices you've made, and I hope this one isn't unreasonable to add.
Okay, and I'd like to report that I met with Randy Lamb of Lamb Developing, or Lamb Partners, to take a look at what they are proposing to bring as an application to planning for the rail yard. That is all I have to report.
I forgot one, sorry. I met with a woman named Chris Close about the bicycle accident on Legacy Trail. It was her son was involved, and we brainstormed some awesome safety measures that I think we should look into.
This is the collision with the kid and the teacher. Yeah, my neighbors saw that. They were responding to that. I too had a video conference with Randy Lamb and the architect. It was I don't know, 6 weeks ago. I didn't say anything. Brendan and I were both on the call. He did all the talking. I listened.
Okay.
Yeah, that sparked a memory. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else get any sparks in their memory, or should we wrap this up?
We're done.
Okay, and with that, we'll adjourn to the next meeting of the Planning Commission, which will be on June 21st, 2022 at 5 p.m. right here at Town Hall, 10183 Truckee Airport Road, Truckee, California, 96161, and that is all.